Around 15,000 people died in this disaster. Many of them were nowhere near the mountain when it began. That is what makes Mount Unzen and the 1792 Shimabara catastrophe so hard to forget. This was not simply a volcano erupting over the people living beside it. It was a chain reaction. Earthquakes shook the region. Part of a mountain collapsed. That collapse slammed into the water, and the sea carried the killing outward. A mountain fell in Japan, and people died across the bay. That single idea is enough to make the whole story feel wrong in the deepest way. Distance should have helped. Water should have separated people from the source of danger. But in Shimabara, geography did not protect anyone. It became the mechanism that spread the disaster farther than most people could have imagined. Mount Unzen rises above the Shimabara Peninsula with the kind of presence that feels ancient, watchful, and immovable. Dark ridges, steep slopes, villages and towns arranged below. The sea nearby, calm enough at times to look almost decorative, as if the mountain and the water belong to different stories. But places like this are never made of one danger at a time. Volcanoes do not kill only through lava. Mountains do not fail only by fire. The deadliest landscapes are often the ones where different forms of violence can hand themselves from one element to another. That is exactly what happened here. Before the final catastrophe, the region was already living under strain. Unzen had been active. Earthquakes were shaking the peninsula. The ground had become restless enough that people knew something was wrong. But knowing a mountain is troubled and understanding how it will kill are two completely different things. That is where Shimabara becomes terrifying. The danger did not stay in the shape people expected, because this was not a story where fire alone destroyed the land. Part of the volcanic complex above Shimabara, the Mayuyama dome, eventually failed. A huge mass of rock and earth collapsed and raced downhill toward the coast. This was not a small slope, giving way in one narrow channel. It was the side of a mountain coming apart with enough force to turn the next part of the landscape into a weapon. And once that collapsing mass hit the water, the disaster changed form. That transformation is the first unforgettable image in this story. Rock became motion. Motion became water. Water became death. When the landslide struck the bay, it displaced enormous volumes of water and generated tsunami waves that swept across Ariake Bay. They hit the Shimabara side. Then they crossed the water and struck the opposite coast. That is the detail that gives this disaster its nightmare quality. The collapse did not end at the shoreline. It learned how to travel. And once you understand that, the whole event changes in your mind. This is no longer just a volcanic disaster. It becomes a relay of destruction. Earthquake into collapse. Collapse into impact. Impact into wave. Wave into distant killing. Each stage hands the violence to the next one so quickly that human instincts cannot keep pace with it. That is why this story feels so cold. The people who died were not all standing under the mountain, watching its slope split open. Many were living near the water, on shores that did not feel like the immediate center of the disaster. Some were on the far side of the bay. They were separated from the original collapse by distance, by water, by the ordinary human belief that danger belongs to the place where it starts. But Shimabara destroyed that belief. The mountain did not keep its violence to itself. The sea carried it outward. Try to picture the human scene for a moment. Communities around Ariake Bay were living beside ordinary shoreline life. Homes, boats, docks, people working, families near the coast, daily rhythms shaped by water, the way coastal life always is. And then, almost impossibly, that water stopped being background and became the final form of the catastrophe. For some, the mountain itself may not even have been visible. For others, the first true understanding of the disaster would not have been fire on a ridge, but water rising the wrong way, moving too fast, carrying force from a place they were not standing beneath. That is the human horror at the center of Shimabara. People being killed by a mountain they were not even near. And because the event was a chain reaction, it must have felt almost impossible to read in real time. First, the unrest, then the collapse, then the impact, then the waves. No single image would have explained all of it at once. That confusion matters. When disasters stay in one form, at least the mind can follow them. A flood is a flood. A landslide is a landslide. An eruption is an eruption. But Shimabara kept changing shape. Every few moments, the danger became something else. That is what gives it such a uniquely cinematic cruelty. The mountain was not just unstable, it was connected to water. The water was not just scenery, it was range. Once the landslide entered Ariake Bay, the geography of the region stopped being protective and started becoming a transmission system. The bay became reach. It took a catastrophe that should have belonged to one slope and delivered it across the water to other communities. This is also why Mount Unzen stands apart from so many volcanic stories. Most volcano narratives are vertical. The mountain erupts and destruction moves down or out from that peak. But Shimabara is lateral. The violence spreads sideways. It crosses, it transfers, it moves from one shore to another. That single structural difference is what makes the whole event so disturbing. People naturally think in circles around danger. Near the volcano, far from the volcano. Close to the slope, safe from the slope. But Shimabara broke those circles. The disaster moved through the bay and redrew who counted as exposed. Visually, it is one of the cruelest settings imaginable. A volcanic peninsula, dark mountain above, quiet water below, settlements arranged where the land seems livable, understandable, ordinary. Then suddenly the entire scene betrays itself. The slope collapses, the sea rises, shorelines that should feel open become traps. Water that should separate one danger from another becomes the thing that carries the killing farther. Once you know the story, even calm water at Shimabara feels different. It no longer looks peaceful. It looks like memory. They frightened by breaking a rule people thought they understood. Here, the broken rule is simple. Being away from the mountain should have helped. It did not help enough. Being across the bay should have mattered more. It did not matter enough. In Shimabara, the people who trusted distance discovered that distance can fail when geography starts passing violence forward instead of holding it back. That is the real wow effect of this place. Not only that around 15,000 people died, though that number alone is staggering. It is that the killing crossed water. The source and the victims were not locked to the same patch of land. The mountain struck one side, and the sea delivered the rest. For the people living around Ariake Bay, that must have changed the meaning of the coastline itself. Shorelines normally suggest access, livelihood, movement, view. But after a disaster like this, the bay becomes something darker in the imagination. Not a boundary, not a comfort, a reach. A path along which force can arrive from somewhere you are not looking. That is why Shimabara lingers. It teaches a terrible lesson. A landscape does not have to collapse directly on top of you to kill you. It only has to remain connected to you. And that lesson still feels modern. Because Mount Unzen in 1792 was not just a violent natural event. It was a demonstration of how one unstable system can hand catastrophe into another and multiply its victims. land to water, water to shore, shore to shore. That cascading pattern is what makes the story so powerful even now. It does not feel like one explosion in one place. It feels like the landscape discovering new ways to keep the disaster going. So when you hear the name Mount Unzen, do not picture only a volcano in Japan. Picture a mountainside breaking loose above the coast. Picture the mass hitting the bay hard enough to raise waves that carry the killing outward. Picture villages and shore communities on opposite sides of Ariake Bay, caught inside the same catastrophe from different directions. Picture a disaster so large and so strange that thousands died, many of them far from the exact place where the mountain first failed. Because this was not simply an eruption story. It was a collapse that used the sea to finish what the mountain started. And if Shimabara is terrifying because a mountain fell once and taught water how to kill across distance, Lake Sare's Usoi Dam is terrifying for the opposite reason. The mountain has already fallen, and the real fear is what it left behind. High in Tajikistan, a colossal landslide created a natural dam and trapped an entire lake behind Broken Mountain. What remains there is not just the memory of collapse, but a suspended threat. Water, debris, unstable slopes, and the possibility that if the wrong movement comes again, the disaster could run through multiple countries before it ends. In the next video, we go there, to a place where the mountain already failed once, and the nightmare is what happens if the wall it built ever stops holding.